Alright, this will be a fun one. We got the Zeus PK Inquisitor version. I'm not a fan of that deck myself. I basically just kind of look at it as taking advantage of the old Inquisitor that they just tried to nerf. But I mean, you gotta hand it to those guys. They came up with that deck really fast when that nerf came out, so I'll give some credit where it's due. Probably one of the harder decks in this game to beat at the moment, just because relatively it can just protect itself for so long with that PK swapping back and forth with the Inquisitor. So this will definitely be one of the harder matches that I'll probably have to play tonight. If he gets an Inquisitor. I mean, like, he doesn't look like he's having too much fun with that right now. I think what I'm going to try to do is, I'll keep this Inquisitor obviously because it's T4. I just wanted to do that so I didn't really have to worry and we to save up our beginning mana without really having to do too much to hurt our board. But I think I'll do one Knight Statue right here, and then I'll either do the other one right here or right here, just so we're hitting all 4 of these damage tiles, and then I'll do 3 Inquisitors on the remaining tiles, and then one of them will be a Sharpshooter, and then we're going to want probably 1 or 2 more Sharpshooters, possibly a 4th one, depending on how our board's looking as we start to build it up. If we're getting the gold Dryads or not, just because we don't want to really be too much on our board for the Scrapper to focus on before we really get our Knight Statue and our Inquisitors up, because, you know, if we don't, then we're going to struggle really badly. And Cyclesnap is a really good player, so I already know this is going to be a fantastic game. What's that one? Increases the mana received, okay. I figured it had something to do with mana. I wasn't 100% sure. So he's got that one twice, and he's also got the Enchanted Monster. We're save up to about probably the end of this wave before I really want to go on to move placing my 4 Inquisitors, just because his Mage Robe is affecting us quite a bit, so we do want a little bit of playroom before we get into that. He's already got a T4 PK, that hurts so badly. Let's see. I rely on my Knight Statue heavier. Would Trapper be not? Trapper would not be an option. You do need your Knight Statue for this, especially with the Light Inquisitor. Like if I left this without a Knight Statue, which I'll do just to show you, you'll start to see in the second wave that it will start to push my Inquisitor back. Versus if that had a T1 Knight Statue, not even having the crit boost of having the 2 Knight Statue, just the 1 Knight Statue of that speed. It makes such a fucking difference, man. Like you can't not have something for speed. Like even this deck here, you notice this guy's using the banner. Obviously that's from him struggling against other ones of these decks, not my deck, other A decks, and that's where he's got the banner in instead of the Dryad. Doesn't really look like that's causing him too much of a problem with his T3 and T5 already. Let's see what we can get going here. That's okay, we can get rid of that. know I said I was gonna leave it without the knight statue, but then I just kind of forgot and built my board. But yeah, no, without that knight statue, this deck's not gonna work well. Don't want to eat that. You notice that I'm not using my Dryads right away. That is because I have my Dryad leveled up. At the level 11, you get the talent for the with a mana up. It gives fairies for random Dryad and a 40% to give it to another Dryad. So basically, until you've got your Dryad to max level, you really don't want to be wasting that because that damage boost that it's going to give you is really useful. At 10 fairies, you're going to be at 25% damage, and then again at 20, you're going to be at 50% more damage. So it definitely does have some value to be using those fairies when and if you can. Should have used that. Decent board, but he's getting really lucky with those Zeuses hitting literally either the Inquisitor or the PK. What talents on my Sharpshooter? These ones. Rifled berries, rifled barrel, stunning shot, and aimed shots. Explain the sharpshooter third talent? Sure. So basically, any troop on my board, just because I got the sharpshooter going, so the sharpshooter's first attack increases the critical damage. So that once that first shot from any sharpshooter hits a boss, it's instantly taking 30% more critical damage from any troop, which is more helping the Inquisitor than it is the sharpshooter. Basically, just helps you mow down bosses faster. Nope, not letting that happen. I wonder why you didn't use the double tile as well, actually. Virus plus Dark Priest is not my friend. Thank you. You're gonna win this. Like, actually? I didn't think I was gonna win this. Oh, well, that's an issue. Jeez, man. That was a great game. And that is on having the stun shooter. If I wasn't able to, like, I know the stun shooter wasn't doing all that much, but it did scare him a little bit into wanting to get that PK and that Inquisitor built up really quickly, which really bit him in the butt. Like, who was it? Throttle pointed out? The Throttle? It was CR Shift that pointed out why he wasn't using the double tile, and I think that actually came down to him not being able to, you know, he didn't want to spend too much time trying to set up his board rather than, okay, I need to get it leveled up because that Sunshot's going to screw me late game, which is exactly what you've seen there. And that PK was actually the same level as the Inquisitor before that Tribunal came out, if there was a Tribunal, because they were both PK and Inquisitor level 7. But what really happened there was he wasn't able to get his 10 orbs built off the sword onto his Inquisitor because he had to have a full board that whole game as to not worry about my stun shots. So that's where I myself prefer the stun shot over Trapper or Chemist, Bombardier, etc. because without that Sharpshooter, he would have been able to play that a lot more comfortably and probably would have been able to set up a little better than he did. Not saying he had a bad setup going there, but he did miss out on the double tile. He did lose out on his banner late game, and he wasn't able to farm those sword orbs. Now I'm going to take a quick second to go over my gear and everything like that, just to kind of highlight what I do to make this deck work so well for me. Now, like I was saying, and like you've seen in that game, I like to have as many of those Inquisitors as I can have on my damage tiles from the Magic Amulet. Now, you're not going to want to use the Growth Amulet because as you've seen me play that game, you're not merging enough for the Growth Amulet to actually give out its true full effect. So between the Kingdom of Light and Alliance of All Kingdoms, I'm getting a total of 40.5% boost. Now, I don't know if that's truly what it comes down to. I know you get the 20.5, and then I think they stack up together to make a total of 41. I'm not 100% to be entirely honest. I think it might actually be they multiply by each other and equal out to like 25.3 or something stupid like that. Either way, you know, both of those are hitting it and doing something, keeping at a minimum of 20.5. Now with the Growth Amulets, which I don't have mine fully leveled up because I kind of messed around with all my gear when they did the gear change and I got rid of a lot of my stuff. So mine's level 14 because it is the best gear, or not gear, but the best amulet. So when you're looking at the amulet growth, you're going to start on 0% boost. So those tiles mean nothing at the beginning of the game. Your first merge is going to put you at 2%. So you have to make 10 merges just to get to that 20%. Now, let alone after those 10 merges, you also have to then, put in another 10 before you can technically classify it as worth it. Because, you know, you don't want 2 or 3% more damage isn't really going to make the hugest amount of difference. But now 10, 20% damage will make that difference. But as you've seen, I'm not merging enough in that deck to make that work. And the Amulet of Slowness, which I don't have one legendary right now, I scrapped mine because the factions weren't perfect on it, so I'd rather just not have one and used it to make better magic amulets. But with this one, I also don't like using it on that deck for the sheer fact of, you know, your stun shot's doing enough that you don't really have to worry about limiting their amount of tiles. It's like when I tried this deck using my Necromancer instead of the gadgets, I simply found that I was almost just hitting weaker and slower because the gadget buffs my speed and my damage, just to freeze out part of their board for parts of the matches, hero lock, etc. But I found there was no true use to that. The boost that you're getting from the damage and the speed from the gadget is just superior. Now, this deck with Zeus 15 would probably work out well because then you also don't have to worry about too much the leveling up process of it. And then you'd also be able to fit probably Trapper in there instead of a Dryad. But then when facing Shaman, that might be a little hard. I myself don't have the 15 Zeus, so I can't talk on trying to make this into a Zeus deck. I just know I see some guys running a 15 Zeus with a Sharpshooter, and they're doing their best to make it work. I faced Last Gold yesterday, and he had the Frost instead of the Scrapper, and then the Sword instead of the Knight Statue. And it was basically running my deck with the Sharpshooter and the Inquisitor, except he had Dark Inquisitor. And that's just on having Zeus, because Zeus does do the buff for the damage and stuff like that. Damage and speed. Put it on, but yeah, we're here. And that's more than the boost that you get from Gadget too, so, you know, definitely worth it there. Now, I use a Mage Robe, mostly, because I don't have a max Hunter. You know what, let's make that right now. Let's do that right now on this video, just so I can say how I can't make one, never mind. Game. Well, that's awkward. But yeah, no, I use the Mage Robe myself just because it's better for that deck to keep their tiers lower. In decks where I faced in that last one, or in this video, where I faced the PK version with the Zeus, my Mage Robe's really helpful in that version instead of the Hunter Jacket, and maybe not so much in that match because he didn't have a Dryad. But if I were to face somebody like Nils, who plays that deck fantastically, like truly just a menace with the PK Inquisitor deck, but he uses the Dryad and uses his Dryad to get his Inquisitor and PK up to T4, T5 even sometimes, before the Zeus is really taking the effect to bring it up to 7 for him. So that Mage Robe does come in handy a lot more than the Hunter's Jacket, I feel like, just because, you know, you can lock them out of building their board up and stuff like that. And then obviously I use the Spear, by far the best piece of equipment to have as your weapon, unless you're running a merge deck, in which case Mana Staff. But like we established with the Amulet, you're not merging enough to want to use something like that. So that's where I come down on my Spear, and I got lucky enough to pull Generosity, which is a huge perk to honestly any deck. I mean, 50% back, 15% per spawn. I mean, that's as high of a percentage chance of happening as it is for the Snowflake Freeze, which I think everybody knows that Snowflake Freeze feels more like a 35-40% than a 15. And then when it comes down to the deck, you're basically just want to do the same thing that I did that game, which is the 4 Inquisitors, aim them to have them on those damage tiles. You want them all on the Knight Statues, obviously. And then the Sharpshooters, it doesn't matter if they're on the Knight Statue or if they're on slowness tiles or even if it's on a Witch tile. That's not really mattering too much because you're not using that for the damage. That's actually just there for the stun shots. And that's where you see people get a little flustered because, I mean, once you get those up in tier, I mean, 3 of them at T4 is firing 12 stun shots. Now, 4 of them at T4, you're looking at 16 stun shots. That is every troop on their board getting stunned for every single time a mini-boss or a boss is killed. So it does get a little bit sweaty for the other side. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have faced this deck and can either not make it work for yourselves because you feel like it's crit dependent or level dependent, or you face this deck and you know, you beat it maybe every time, but you know this deck's a menace. So that's kind of where I just want to go over it, because I made this deck at the beginning of the season after they kind of nerfed everything, and I didn't really know what I was going to do, because I didn't want to really resort to Shaman or Witch or Clock, just because, I don't know, I don't use those 3 cards. I like to have fun with the game, and I don't view those cards as fun for me or my opponent, so I tend to stay away. Am I going to call this deck not toxic? I'm going to call it sophisticated. You know, it's not toxic, but it definitely isn't a cleanly way to play. Until next time, guys, I look forward to posting a bunch of videos with this deck to highlight some great games and just put out the gameplay a little bit more out there with this deck, considering Sharpshooter has just about never been in the meta, and it's cool to see that it actually works up at the top end and is participating as a rare unit, considering we don't really see many of those anymore up here. Until next time, guys, peace out.